Courage, integrity, vision, and his ability to communicate were the main pillars of Churchill's leadership. There were, of course, other important elements. He anticipated by more than half a century the concepts which management gurus now preach, like management by walking about. One day, when he was visiting an aircraft carrier, he went missing, and a search party was sent out for fear that he had fallen overboard. But he was found down in the engine room getting the views of the men on the lower deck. He needed to see for himself, to influence people, and to make things happen. Few people realize how hazardous were Churchill's extensive travels during World War II. In his first 6 weeks as Prime Minister, he made 5 dangerous flights into France in the hope of putting steel into the French government, which was on the point of collapse. That was just the beginning. He went to Canada 3 times, to Moscow twice, here to the United States on 6 occasions, to Tehran, Casablanca, and Yalta, in addition to visits to the battlefronts of the Western Desert, Italy, and Normandy. On some occasions, he had to fly in unpressurized aeroplanes, and therefore was told he had to wear an oxygen mask. Determined that he wouldn't forego his pleasure of his great Havana cigar, he had his oxygen mask adapted so he could breathe in the oxygen and puff away on his cigar at the same time. But there are other facets of his leadership which are worth studying. When he became Prime Minister in 1940, he relegated to the past the mistakes of his predecessors by declaring to Parliament, "If we open a quarrel between the past and the present, we shall find we have lost the future." This is a good example of putting right any enterprise that has gone wrong. Of allies, he said the following: "When one looks at the disadvantages attaching to alliances, one must not forget how superior are the advantages." In business, as in war, pragmatism will determine the best form of alliance. When Russia was invaded by Germany in 1941, he reconciled his support for Russia with his loathing of communism by declaring, "If Hitler invaded hell, I would at least make a favorable reference to the devil in the House of Commons." Strong leaders should never appear desperate, as we see from Churchill's courtship of President Roosevelt in the 2 years before Pearl Harbor. With Europe overrun, it seemed that Britain would soon succumb, causing Roosevelt to hesitate in sending the material help that Churchill needed. Churchill's advisors suggested parting British technical secrets wholesale in exchange for more rapid assistance. But he demurred, saying, "If an exchange is to be arranged, I should like to carry it out piece by piece." In March 1941, the Lend-Lease Act was passed by Congress, fulfilling Churchill's famous plea in a broadcast largely directed at American listeners.
"Put your confidence in us. Give us your faith and your blessing, and under Providence all will be well. We shall not fail or falter. We shall not weaken or tire. Neither the sudden shock of battle nor the long-drawn trials of vigilance and exertion will wear us down. Give us the tools, and we will finish the job."
How does a leader under enormous pressure relieve the stress? This was my grandfather's recipe. Change is the master key. The cultivation of a hobby and new forms of interest is therefore a policy of first importance to a public man. He was a man of many interests. His favorite diversion was painting. I was with him when he put the final brushstrokes to one of his last paintings, which hangs in my study at home. And whenever I look at it, I hope that my grandfather is fulfilling his ambition for the afterlife. He said, "I know of nothing which, without exhausting the body, more entirely absorbs the mind. When I get to heaven, I want to spend the first 1,000,000 years painting and get to the bottom of the subject." So I hope he's doing a lot of painting now. All leaders need someone with whom they can discuss their fears and their successes, someone who will back them up, yet tell them when they're getting things wrong. For Churchill, it was his wife, Clementine. She always said what she thought. He always listened, but didn't necessarily act on it. In 1940, she became alarmed that his temper was suffering under the strain, and she wrote him a letter. "My darling, I hope you will forgive me if I tell you something which I feel you ought to know. One of the men in your entourage, a devoted friend, has been to me and told me that there is danger of you being generally disliked by your colleagues and subordinates because of your rough and overbearing manner. I was astonished and upset, because in all these years I have been accustomed to all those who have worked with you and under you, loving you. I said this and was told, no doubt it's the strain. My darling Winston, I must confess I have noticed a deterioration in your manner, and you are not so kind as you used to be. Please forgive your loving, devoted, and watchful Clementine." Without my grandmother, history might have taken a different course. My grandfather was very much a human being. He had his successes, he had his failures, he had his faults, and he had his strengths. But I believe that his example of leadership is as relevant today as it was in 1940, and that it is an inspiration to anyone in any field who aspires to lead. I would like to end by reading to you a tribute which was made just after World War II, when my grandfather had been voted out of office by a friend and colleague of his, Duff Cooper. "When ears were deaf and tongues were mute, you told of doom to come. When others fingered on the flute, you thundered on the drum. When armies marched and cities burned, and all you said came true, those who had mocked your warnings turned, almost too late, to you. And doubt gave way to firm belief, and through 5 cruel years, you gave us glory in our grief and laughter through our tears. When final honors are bestowed and last accounts are done, then shall we know how much was owed by all the world to one."